President, any comments?
Donald Trump rushed out of that room where he was speaking about Mother's Day. It was a very odd press conference that he was holding, but he was exposed during that press conference and he had to get out of there quickly. That's the moment that we learned both Saudi Arabia and Kuwait were banning Donald Trump and banning the United States from using their military bases as well as their airspace, and that was the true reason why in under 24 hours Donald Trump was shutting down what he was calling Project Freedom, where he said he was going to escort ships through the Strait of Hormuz, and it was the most successful military operation in American military history. Now, while Donald Trump was in that room, you can see his hands rotting. He had lots of makeup all over his hands. The cognitive and physical decline was very, very apparent. We'll talk about more what was going on in there in a second. We'll talk about how Iran is reacting to Donald Trump's capitulation and surrender. I got big news to report there as well. But it wasn't just Donald Trump running away, rushing away from the cameras. At the same time, you had Howard Lutnick, who's also part of the Epstein class with Donald Trump, rushing away from the cameras as Lutnick was supposed to have his deposition taken yesterday about the Epstein files, but Donald Trump, Lutnick, James Comer, and MAGA Mike turned that deposition into a transcribed interview with no videotape deposition. And it wasn't a deposition. It was just a transcribed interview, not under oath. So first you saw Donald Trump run away. Here's Lutnick running away. They all run away when it comes to telling the truth, being under oath. They love going on regime media to lie. But when it comes to accountability, these people are vile. They lie. They're pathetic. They panic. They're scared. Remember that. Here, play this clip.
Why did you continue to communicate with him after his conviction? Mr. Secretary, can you clarify what happened when you went on the boats and family got? Why did you do that? Did you know anything about his
Now, seeing these individuals visibly panic, visibly shake, here's how Iran has responded. Iran's parliament leader, MB Ghalibaf, writes, Operation Trust Me Bro failed. Now back to the routine with Operation Foxios, referring to Axios as just fraudulent and false, is I believe what they're trying to say, in my opinion, because Barack Ravid over at Axios every day continues to launder Donald Trump's lies, which appears to manipulate the market, where we see lots of people shorting oil or buying stocks in certain sectors, timed with Barack Ravid stories. Ravid denies it, but we could all see what's happening, in my opinion. Then Iran's social media accounts goes back to Fox and Axios operations, spreading Donald Trump's dreams. So when Donald Trump rushed out of that meeting, he ran, I don't know, to his bedroom, I don't know, throw ketchup around, who knows, but picked up that phone of his and he's like, I gotta make all of these posts. So here's what Donald Trump then posted shortly thereafter. He goes, wow, study this chart, DJT. And it's like the Afghanistan war, 543 weeks. The Iraq war, 457 weeks. Vietnam, 439 weeks. The Civil War, 209 weeks. War of 1812, 139 weeks. World War II, 196 weeks. Iran excursion, 6. Well, first off, you're putting it under something called length of wars, thereby admitting it's a war. Dude, whether it's 6 or 8 or 10 or 50, the reality is it has been catastrophic. It has so severely weakened America's standing in the world long term at this point. I mean, you've got, I'll do a video on this in about an hour. So check back on this YouTube channel in about an hour. I'll do a video just about how all of Europe has banned the US essentially from their air bases. In the Middle East, those countries have banned the US from their air bases. Donald Trump, meanwhile, is basically, while he continues to attack NATO, and he just has obviously made it very clear, in my opinion, that he's a Putin bootlicker. And you have NATO saying, we're not even going to hold meetings with leaders of countries until Donald Trump's term is out, because no one wants to be around Donald Trump. So you're bragging about, and by the way, where do you get 6 from? Like, do you have to lie about everything? You started the war on February 28th. It's May 6th right now. That's more than 6 weeks. Oh, but it was a ceasefire and the hostilities have ended and we've won the war and Iran's negotiating. Dude, be quiet. Be quiet. Then Donald Trump posts this photo of this guy, Gorka, Sebastian Gorka. This is what Donald Trump's focused on. As Trump calls it, the enemy from within. That's the most dangerous, going after Americans, because that's what fascist, vile pieces of trash do. And that's what lives in the White House right now. I don't know how else to describe it. Donald Trump posts, new Trump counterterrorism strategy elevates threats from leftist groups like Antifa. Here comes Gorka with his tight shirt and his belly and man boobs hanging out. Yeah, Gorka. Come on, how pathetic are these people? How pathetic are these people? Meanwhile, you have Iran's one of Iran's top military people, a guy named Mohsen Razi. He's former IRGC commander. He's very close with the Ayatollah. He gave an interview with Al Mayadeen, big network in Lebanon, Al Mayadeen. And here's how he describes what's going on. He's like, look, the U.S. is trying to stage a symbolic reopening of the Strait of Hormuz and then quietly exit the region without paying a price. But Tehran will not allow that to happen. He goes, Iran believes the confrontation must produce concrete political and strategic gains, including compensation for the war damages and release of frozen Iranian assets before any serious negotiation can resume. He claims that Pakistan's prime minister informed Tehran that Washington agreed to Iran's 10 conditions, but then J.D. Vance and Donald Trump said, we don't mean that. We can't agree to these things. And this is a reason from Tehran's perspective. It's increasingly difficult to take Washington's negotiating posture seriously because they lie about everything. Razi further alleges that during the final days of the ceasefire, the U.S. deployed naval and air assets in the Sea of Oman in an attempt to pressure and encircle Iran before once again requesting negotiations. The broader point emerging from Razi's remarks, as Babak Vadad explains, as many analysts underline, Tehran treats their resilience as a strategic asset. And speaking of that resilience, satellite imagery right now shows Iranian oil wells still pumping at Karg Island. What was it now? Donald Trump likes to say numbers. So what was it, 10 days ago? More that Donald Trump said that Iran's oil pipes were so filled with pressure, they were going to burst and explode because the naval blockade was so effective. Not only is that not happening, but Iranian oil wells are pumping at Karg Island. The Copernicus EU Sentinel-2 satellite imagery from Wednesday morning shows 3 tankers simultaneously loading oil at Karg Island, Iran's primary oil export terminal, directly contradicting Trump's claims that Iran's oil infrastructure is on the verge of collapse. Bloomberg energy correspondent Javier Blas, who shared the imagery, noted dryly, far from exploding, Iranian oil wells are pumping and pumping and pumping. Don't believe everything the White House says. Trump claimed last week that Iran's oil facilities were in the final days before catastrophic failure, even though most energy experts said that that was utterly false. As I noted as well, while Donald Trump destroys American alliances, you have Iran further building its alliances. We know that Iran's always been allied with China, but you had Foreign Minister Araghchi. He was greeted as a conquering hero when he met his counterpart Wang Yi over in China, China's foreign minister. And Araghchi said, we recognize that based on winning this war, we're being treated differently by China, more as equals, more as we're being respected in the region. And that's how Iran feels. Iran feels they won this war because they did win the war. Because if we think about, I don't know, if you're not in the US, you call it football. In the US, we call it soccer. Who scores the most points wins. If the score is 1-0, the team with 1 wins, the team with nothing loses. In Trump's world, if you have nothing, you claim that you win, and you claim the 1 is fake news because Iran got the 1. They control the Strait of Hormuz. They haven't given up their nuclear material, which they can still turn into nuclear weapons if they want. They have their ballistic missiles and Shahid drones. They have their proxy groups that are more powerful than ever. The regime is still in place. Trump regime has lost the Strait of Hormuz, and now they're just out there lying every day. 1-0 Iran. I don't know how else to describe it. And then when you watch Donald Trump, this blubbering, babbling fool, he goes up yesterday and he's like, we're going to get people by the sea. We're taking them by the ocean, by the water. And when I say the word sea, I don't mean eyes like sea. I mean the water. What are you even talking about? Here, play this clip.
Like it, but the numbers speak for themselves. If you really get down, you see drug traffic coming into our country is way down. And by ocean, by the water, a lot of people say, what do you mean by sea? Is it sea like vision? No, it's the SEA. But it's down 97%.
And it should be noted that the United States has murdered about 100 people off the coast of Venezuela, just killing people on fishing boats, never providing justification, just every other day, just killing people, bombing fishing boats. And in fact, in a lot of the boats we found out about where they're fishers. They're not drug smugglers. But the Trump regime is bloodthirsty. They're sickos. This is what they do. And speaking of the fact that they're sickos, listen to this stat. As Donald Trump is out there running away from accountability, as Howard Lutnick is running away from accountability, listen to this. The U.S. is setting records for fertilizer purchases from Russia. In March, the United States imported more than $240 million worth of Russian fertilizer, the highest level in the history of bilateral trade. For the quarter, the total reached $564 million, up 37% year on year. Russian fertilizer remained competitive due to cheap natural gas used in production, which keeps prices lower. Sanctions have also had an unexpected effect. New U.S. tariffs did not hit Russia, but affected competitors, tilting the market in Moscow's favor. In other words, Trump tariffed our allies, and there's no sanctions on Russian fertilizer. So Russia has a free path to sell its fertilizer into the United States. The situation was further worsened by the crisis in the Middle East, meaning Trump's catastrophic and unlawful war. Disruption in the Strait of Hormuz pushed many suppliers out of the market, sending fertilizer prices sharply higher. So in Europe, they don't want to buy the Russian fertilizer because they've got Ukraine's back and they're not trying to funnel all of their money to Russia. But Trump is. Trump is buying from Russia. And by the way, Kirill Dmitriev, Russia's envoy to the U.S., says the U.S. is wise to significantly increase its purchases of Russian fertilizer to the highest level in history, while the EU and UK will experience a major agriculture crisis due to their Russia-phobic positions. U.S. farmers and consumers benefit while the EU and UK suffers. Wasn't it Marco Rubio who said the other day, we don't need fertilizer? It's their fertilizer that's stranded, not our fertilizer. Here, play this clip.
This is a favor to the world because it's their ships that are stranded. It's their fuel supplies that are stranded. By the way, it's their there's humanitarian aid destined for different countries in the world that's stranded in the Persian Gulf right now. It's the fertilizer that they need for their food and crops that's stranded in the Persian, not our fertilizer, their fertilizer.
And meanwhile, you have Kevin Hassett, Donald Trump's national economic advisor, bragging that Americans are spending so much money on their credit cards right now. Cool boast, man. Not the brag you think it is, man. Play the clip.
In fact, I had the head of one of the big 5 banks in my office yesterday going through the credit card data, and just as Secretary Bessent said, credit card spending is through the roof. They're spending more on gasoline, but they're spending more on everything else too. And so in terms of the jobs picture for the rest of the year, it's really hard to see having the unemployment rate go up, for example. It's probably going to drop a little bit, but it's already very close to full employment.
There you have it, everybody. Let me know what you think. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 7 million subscribers. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you. Thanks for watching. Be sure to add the MeidasTouch podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts for new updates every single day.